BMW Motorcycle Owners of America present the Short Wheelbase Podcast. With members in all 50 states, Canada, and across the globe, the BMW MOA invites you to ride inspired. Learn more about membership benefits, including roadside assistance, tire hazard protection, and more at bmwmoa.org. The Short Wheelbase Podcast is also brought to you by Boxer 2 Valve, supplier of quality OEM and aftermarket parts and specialty tools, and by Air Support BMW, offering premium driveline rebuilding and performance enhancements for your air-cooled BMW.
Hello, welcome to episode 4 of the Short Wheelbase Podcast. How are you doing today, Darren?
Nick, I'm doing quite well. Beautiful fall day here in the Ozarks for sure.
Great. Yep. Same can be reported here outside of Denver. Nice and calm weather, mild weather, great riding weather.
Indeed. It is kind of peak time, I think, for most folks around. I know our friends down in Texas, they finally shut the oven off in the Southwest, so the temperatures are probably getting to be reasonable. Up north, this is kind of the last hurrah for a lot of folks, and those of us kind of here in the Midwest who really, I don't see much winter, to be honest, anymore. We're just, making sure the heated grips work and you've got the long johns and leathers ready to go.
Yeah, same here. We do get winter here in Colorado, of course, but down here at the lower elevation near Denver, we get plenty of 60, 70-degree days throughout the winter time. So I don't winterize my bike or anything like that. I just put more clothes on. So today we have an excerpt at the end here. It is from a chat that Darren had with Zac Markgraf about his low miles 93 R100 GS. We're going to go over our garage updates first, as always. The Survivor Series bike for this week is also focused around Zac and his.
That's right. We've tied it in wonderfully today, Nick.
The show.
Yes.
Yeah, he's the star of the show this week. But before jumping into any of that, I wanted to circle back to last week's episode and the pink R90S.
Oh, good. Yes.
So at the end of the episode, I still hadn't seen the bike. So I did find a photo.
I saw that
in the episode 3. You can see it while you're watching. And so I was reserving my opinion until I could see it. And now that I've seen it, I have to agree, it's not for me.
No, it's funky, and I don't know
I
don't know the story behind it either. But yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, so far, no one in the YouTube comments have sided with the pink bike, and no one on my Instagram page has sided with the pink bike either. One person on the Instagram comments mentioned that they have a friend who has a Pink Smoke Pink Smoke S. But it is not the original Pink Panther bike. I think it was a custom job that happened later. I'm still waiting on pictures for that. If I get them, I will share them. So that's the pink R90S once again. We'll roll into the garage update. So my garage update last week, I was complaining about the previous owner of my conversion bike and some of the wiring that was going on.
Mm-hmm.
That was both preventing my taillight from working and my horn from stopping. My horn was just going constantly. Happy to report that after chasing some wires, I figured out what was wired wrong, and I replaced the left-hand switch on the handlebars, and that fixed the horn. Also spent some time cleaning up the headlight bucket. There was a whole bunch of splice connectors, the plastic crimp connectors in there.
Yeah.
That honestly, I'm not really sure why. I'm not really sure why they were even there, because they were, if I remember correctly, they were connecting wires at the wrong point. Anyway, cleaned all that up. There are still some crimp connectors in there, but I think there's about 1 or 2 as opposed to the 6 that I found in there. So the bike is operational again. Like I said earlier, it's fall here, so I'm just enjoying the weather. I'm hoping to hop on the bike tomorrow morning and bundle up and ride up into a canyon here outside of Denver, get some turns in, some twisties in, and just have some fun.
Approved. I'm going to solidly approve that endeavor.
Great. I'm happy that my garage update is finally something is done.
It's a good feeling, isn't it?
It is. It's a great feeling. So, Darren, what did you get done?
Well, decidedly, maybe a little bit more than that, but not a whole lot. So first thing though, before we get into that, I told you in our pre-email chat earlier, I was going to drop a question on you, a surprise question. And so here it is.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So as you know, the green motorcycle we've been talking about here that I bought back in Germany, that hasn't gone up on the lift and under the knife for the winter yet. But I have been doing a few little things here and there on it. But I guess what I wanted to ask you was, you remember we talked about the cracked wheel on the R90S that was prone to the /6 series, apparently. So I wanted to ask you, you've got a 50-50 chance here.
Mm-hmm.
Is the rear wheel on my R75/6, does it have a crack or not? What do you think?
I'm going to say yes, just based on the description of your driveway.
100% it does. I don't think I did it either, but I noticed one small hairline crack on it. And so there you have it. I'll probably be in the market for another aftermarket rim with the BMW hub, obviously, like I bought last time. But the need for that is not immediate right now. The one small crack I can live with, maybe into the spring or something like that. But yes, it does have a crack. Okay, so my garage update is installing a relay on my SendTech AP1 fuse block. So you'll pull up some pictures here momentarily. And let me just say, this SendTech AP1, a lot of folks use different fuse blocks. Whatever floats your boat and works, obviously, is fine. For my purposes, this is handling the wiring and the routing for my horn. I've got added a dual horn relay that wasn't on and this is for the R100S behind me. Added a dual horn with the relay, ran it through that. I have auxiliary lights and heated grips, and all those, except I had everything on there, and it was not disconnected from the battery. So that means I could leave the auxiliary lights on. Theoretically, I could leave the heated grips on, and but the horn would not honk without the key on. But the other things worked without the key being on. And that's all good until you leave the heated grips on overnight and the battery totally discharges. And I knew this was going to happen. It was a matter of time. And I wanted to say, I don't know, one, why I didn't put the relay in right out of the gate. Part of it, I think, is when I bought the SendTech, wherever I bought it from, it wasn't like, users also purchase this, or you may want to consider this. It was just the fuse block and then no real mention of the relay. I didn't think about it. Anyway, you'll see in the picture here again that what I ended up doing on this /7 is I took out the standard voltage regulator, which looks like this. And in place of it, I put this smaller, thinner one. And so what that enabled me to do was to put that SendTech, essentially, that goes right where that voltage regulator went. And that's about the best place I could find for it. The other picture we have shows where the relay went. That was pretty handy, right on the little battery mounting rubber grommet nut back there, popped right on there. And so now I've got it set up, Nick, to where everything, and then ran one hot lead up into an open terminal, hot lead terminal in the headlight. So now I've got it where everything is on keyed power. I can't leave the heated grips on. I can't leave the lights on and all that kind of stuff. So I should have done that years ago. That battery I had in there it was an Odyssey, over 10 years old, which is hard to believe. I totally discharged it. It managed to take a charge and function again. Those batteries cannot be killed. I don't know what the deal is, but they are amazing. I did order a new one, and I was also looking at an Odyssey battery, and I was looking at seeing what other folks use. Really, there's two types. There's a PC 680 Odyssey battery, which is much thinner. And I have that version in my GS, in the 81 GS. The PC 925 it fills up the whole battery box, and it goes in and out real easily. And the thing I like about it, Nick, is it has forward terminals. So it's not under the tool tray, so to speak. The terminals are facing forward. Yep. So it's easy to disconnect the negative terminal, and then you're not just sitting there running the clock or anything like that. So I'm a big fan of the PC 925, especially on the /6 and /7 Airheads.
Gotcha. And with that the smaller voltage regulator, is that one of the adjustable ones?
That's a good question. This one I don't know where I have got the one I had. Sometimes I just end up with parts. Like, for instance, this one is this is a motor rod electric voltage regulator I got from our friend Scott in Missouri, and it just says high output. So where the other one, I probably got from Rick at Motor Rod Electric, but it's been so long I can't remember. It was in a parts box. And the other thing I wanted to share was a little show and tell. I got a good parts haul. So we badmouth Facebook a lot.
Awesome.
Rightfully so. Facebook can be just a horrible place. But if you limit it to just motorcycle stuff, it's tolerable. And sometimes you even find some good deals. So I wanted to share with you, I found in Cincinnati, I had some friends coming down from Ohio this past week in Cincinnati. And when I knew that, I had buddies up there who were driving down. What did I do? I got on Facebook Marketplace in Cincinnati and saw, are there any parts my friend can bring down for me? Sure enough, there was.
I got a nice travel.
Yeah, exactly. I got a nice box of stuff for $80. And so what that included, I can't show you everything, but this was nice. I mean, just for $80 here, I got a clock and a voltmeter in the pods with the wiring, which is a good little score. I need a new pod on the green bike. And then you'll be able to tell right away what the guy was parting out. Apparently it was a 79 R100T. And I would have advised against that. It's a 1 year only bike, but whatever. This battery cover on the right side, very nice. And I just wanted to show this. The one on the left side
quite well.
Yeah. The one on the left side, this suffered from I forgot to take the grab handle off and broke the battery cover syndrome, or cracked it, which happens a lot on /5 and /6 and /7 bikes. So in addition to those, I got a nice handlebar and a couple other doodads and things I need for the /6. Okay, last thing. So you remember last week we were talking about the perch on the RS, and I had to get that neutral safety switch in there. Here's something I didn't know. There are two types of neutral safety switches. So this perch I bought to put on the RS, it came with this older style that plugs in directly to the wherever that is, the bottom part of the switch. The ones that you buy now are completely sealed. And what was interesting to note was I have a newer one that I put in with the RS, and to get it to seat properly into the clutch perch, if anybody has to do this, what I ended up doing, Nick, was just taking a razor and sort of just trimming these plastic parts down a little bit so it fit better and snapped into the perch. I didn't know there were two types of neutral safety switches, but now I do. And if you buy a new one and it doesn't fit in your clutch perch easily, just trim it up and you're good to go. So I think there
you go.
That's it for my garage update.
Awesome. A lot going on.
There is, yeah.
Yeah. I was trying to keep track of them. There's parts coming in. There's
exactly.
one bike getting fixed. You're keeping track of a wheel problem on another bike.
Well, when you've got,
it's a lot easier to keep track of.
It is. When you've got 5, there's always time for a garage update. We'll put it that way.
That's fantastic. I'm hoping to join the ranks of multi-bike ownership soon.
Indeed.
So moving right along into the survivor bike of the week, as mentioned earlier, Zac is kind of the star of the show today. He's going to be the clip or the excerpt at the end. He's also the subject of our survivor bike with his 93 R100 GS. As a reminder, the survivor bike series is on the Airhead 247 website. You can find all the bikes that we talk about there.
Yep.
So you can see more pictures and more detail or read more detail there. So Darren, tell us a little bit about Zac and this bike.
So he was one of the first, Zac was one of the first to write and submit a Survivor Series bike back in March when we first started sort of putting the word out and soliciting these. And boy, he's got a gem. Zac is a few years younger than you, so early, mid-30s. And he found, I think it was in Detroit, found a 93 R100 GS in Mystic Red with the funky graphics. And he put his eyes on that and essentially said, this is a bike I want to get. You'll hear him talk about in the interview. He really wanted a Paris-Dakar, but the bike apparently came with some parts, and he's also maybe procured some other parts to turn it into a PD with the big tank and all that. So the nice thing about this, though, is he understands and appreciates the idea of a nice original condition bike. So any work he's going to do, any changes are going to be reversible to be able to put it back to stock condition. So whatever he pulls off, take it off, clean it, wash it, wax it, pack it up, put it in a box so it's ready to either be put back on or sold with the bike again at some other point. And when I talked with him, the interview was from last March. So he had just attended his first Airhead SuperTech session, and he rode the bike there. So you'll hear us discuss that. Cool. We just kind of go through his learning process in getting introduced to Airheads. And as you mentioned on the 247 site, there's a whole write-up, some additional information, a lot of photos there. You can check that out. I dropped Zac a note a couple of weeks ago before I knew we were going to do this. And his update was he's had a second child, and he's considering now long-term storage on the motorcycle, which I can understand. I don't have children, so it's not something I comprehend fully, but I get it. I know that was a consideration for you at one time, wasn't it?
Yep. I've got a 7-year-old son. So 7 years ago, his birthday's in a few weeks here. But yeah, 7 years ago, I was going through this same mental battle with myself of, do I keep the bike? Do I store the bike? Do I sell the bike? Ultimately, I ended up selling the bike I had at the time. That was my 83 R80 RT.
I remember that.
Mostly because I knew myself well enough to know that there was no such thing as storage. If it was in the garage, I would unstore it at some point and ride it anyway. So I felt like if I was having these internal arguments with myself, I should probably just remove the temptation for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I was bikeless for about 5 years until I bought the conversion bike and kind of got back into it. But it's a hard thing to make make your head right on as to whether or not you want to ride, and you got little ones at home. So I understand completely.
Yep. Well,
I'm glad
like I
to
said,
hear that he's at least thinking about it and considering what the best choice is.
Well, that's what you have to do. So maybe we'll get an update from Zac later on next year, find out where he is with this. And I'd like to see some pictures if he does get the PD parts put on there. I don't know what color he's going with that or exactly how it's all going to work out, because it's a Mystic Red bike. So is he doing Mystic Red on the PD tank? I don't know. Zac, if you're listening to this, please update us or put it in the comments down below and let folks know what you're thinking. But as I mentioned, we did this interview back in March, so it's a little dated, but still fresh enough that it's topical and makes sense. Again, pictures on our website, and there's also a new, if you haven't been on the website recently and haven't looked at the Survivor Series, we also have a great 75/6 in bold door red that we put up there from a fellow called Todd Weed. He sent that in. It's a real stunner. It looks really nice. So check all that stuff out on the 247 website.
Cool. Yeah, it was, I enjoyed listening to it myself. Like you mentioned, he's a few years younger than me. So it's always fun to hear from other people with this affliction who are in the younger age groups. Like he mentions in his chat that, at the SuperTech, he was pretty young compared to most of the people there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's exactly how I feel when I show up at all of these tech events, and even hosting my tech day back last summer. It was, I think I was one of the youngest people and I was the host.
Yeah.
So it's great to see the younger guys involved. It's great to, have them getting all the knowledge that the older generations have, because it's how we're going to keep these bikes on the road and how we're going to keep them going. So cheers to you, Zac. Well, I think that's all we have today. We'll just roll right into your interview or your chat with him. As always, the links to everything will be down below in the description. And if you want to reach out to me, I'm on Instagram at Airhead Misfits. Darren has his website, airhead247.com. Or you could just comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.
The BMW Motorcycle Owners of America and BMW Motorrad have teamed up for a 10% rebate for MOA member purchases of original BMW apparel, accessories, and all OEM parts. In essence, if it has a BMW motorcycle part number, MOA members can earn a 10% rebate on the purchase. Those of you doing a big refresh or restoration on your 247, no doubt this can save you some cash. Or maybe you're in the market for a new riding suit or jacket. Those are included as well. Every purchase made at a BMW Motorrad-based dealer in the United States, for example, Max or Bob's BMW, or online at shopbmwmotorcycles.com, qualifies for the rebate. MOA members simply submit purchase information directly to the MOA for the rebate. Rebates are managed by the MOA, and members are free to support any dealer of their choice where original BMW parts, gear, and accessories are sold. So if you're already an MOA member, well done, and you've probably already taken advantage of this offer. If you're not an MOA member, visit the About section of this podcast for information on the MOA's free one-year membership promotion, and start earning 10% back on all BMW parts, apparel, and accessories. On the line with us is Zac Markgraf. He is in Lakewood, New York. And Zac, how did then you find this bike that you have? It's a 93 R100 GS. So where was it? What's the story behind it? Where'd you find it for sale? Who was the owner? That kind of stuff.
So I had just gotten relatively soon before this bike an R100 RT, and I believe that was an 88. And I absolutely adored that bike. That was the first Airhead that I had. And unfortunately, through one kind of mistake or another, just wasn't able to make that bike work for me long term. And I had sort of lusted after pretty much anything, Paris Dakar my entire childhood, and had always seen, the GS bikes and wanted one ultimately, and just sort of decided, if I'm going to ride Airheads, I should really just try and find the bike I've always wanted, which probably would have been, like most folks, the Paris Dakar version, of the Paralever GS, but ended up finding this one in Detroit for at the time, a pretty decent deal, I thought, and very low mileage. And this was an engineer who worked on, he was an engineer that was contracted by the military and various other first responder sort of agencies to make some pretty awesome equipment, mostly like all-terrain vehicles and 6x6s and stuff like that. So it was an engineer who owned it and who had meticulous service history, and I think it was maybe 2 days I thought about it and decided, you know what, it's a 12-hour drive or so, or I'm just going to go get it, and hopped in the car and ran out there one night and got it. Might have been 8 hours, but anywho, yeah, had to get it.
Did you have a chance to visit with the seller/owner?
Yeah, unfortunately, very briefly, and we certainly had a connection. It's kind of a shame that we couldn't live a little bit closer, because definitely shared a lot of love for this bike, and this was a dream bike for him that he used more as a backup bike. I believe he rode, I think it was like a KLX 250 on his acreage. That was kind of his beater bomb around bike on that property, and he kind of saved this for the dreaming of taking it long distance kind of thing. And just really an awesome guy with an incredibly meticulous shop, exactly the kind of person that you want to buy a bike from. And enjoyed him a lot. So grateful to be a custodian of the bike from him.
That really gives you some confidence as a purchaser when you go into a clean, well-maintained shop. You've arrived at the right place, and you've really made a good decision on the motorcycle you're going to buy. No?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I was pretty taken aback by just the service history that he had provided over the phone. I mean, it was incredible that he had taken on the final drive service himself, which is pretty daunting. I mean, me being new to Airheads, just kind of reading, again, sort of cursory, all the info about that. I was pretty impressed that he was willing to do that, and to finally see his shop in person and see that it was probably done correctly, So
yeah, indeed. And you mentioned you had a 88 RT prior to that, so you were familiar with the we're getting towards the last run of the 247 Airhead. Yours, the bike you own now, the 93, just a few years away from that end run. But what did you know going in? Did you do some research, I guess is what I want to ask here, prior to buying this bike? Did you spend some time looking up this particular run and era of the GS, some of the potential issues? Did you know what you were up against when you bought it?
Yeah. If I have to guess where you're kind of leading with that question, would be like a difference between a monolever and a paralever, which
Sure.
is the primary difference between those two. Absolutely. Granted, I mean, I have a tendency to just kind of snowball into hobbies with probably way too much bigger, but I definitely read at least cursory about the differences and some of what folks would call the shortcomings of the paralever design, and knew well about the drive shaft issues and also what I was sacrificing by leaving monolever, which even now I think definitely the route I'm going to go eventually. I'll definitely work my way back to a monolever bike, but not for any reason other than it's an incredibly elegant design and I'm passionate about it. But I think going into this bike at the time was 15,500 miles. So, as far as any paralever concerns, theoretically, I've got quite a bit of time before that becomes an issue. But really beyond that, it's like, what are the other issues? Not too many. Another one that would be slightly concerning would be a circlip in the transmission. And very ironically, I just got off the phone with Anton last night because I drained my transmission fluid after taking the bike to SuperTech just now, and quite a bit of shavings in there. And that was the second time I drained that fluid and saw shavings. And talking to him, it sounds like it might be some bearing material due to a circlip issue. So, yeah, that's a bummer. But nonetheless, pretty excited about the bike. But,
yeah. Well, that is a bummer. But if you would you be pulling it yourself and just boxing it off and sending it to him for repair?
Yeah, I think that's the route I'll go. I mean, I'm fighting the urge to open it myself, but I mean, walking through his sort of course at SuperTech there, not really a course, just sort of like a lecture on the transmissions. It's still pretty daunting. It's nothing I'd be able to fix at all, but golly, do I want to see, I want to get in there. It's kind of why you buy an Airhead, right?
Yeah, right.
I'm fighting the urge to open it myself, but it would certainly do better with him. So.
Well, it's good to know you know your limits. Air Support BMW is a dedicated shop for air-cooled BMW motorcycles, offering high-end restorations and engine blueprinting for all models from World War II through 1995. Air Support offers expert mail-order component repair for transmissions, final drives, carbs, well, anything you can ship, they'll fix it. Air Support uses BMW OEM parts, factory tools, and brings years of experience to each job. And don't worry about shipping to Canada. Shipping rates are affordable and on par with other options. You can follow shop happenings, repairs, bike builds, all of George Thomas's racing exploits on Instagram as well. To schedule your next repair or to find out how George Thomas can help keep your 247 in good order, drop a line or give him a call. It's all there for you at airsupportbmw.com. One of the reasons so many Airheads are still on the road today is because of great parts suppliers and enthusiasts like Boxer 2 Valve. William and Edward Plam at Boxer 2 Valve have years of experience with the 247 Airhead, dating back to their first repair shop and dealership in the early 1980s. Boxer 2 Valve stocks and sources only premium parts and tools, so no need to worry if you're getting a cheap pattern or shortcut part. They simply don't carry them. Boxer 2 Valve has extensively researched which parts are correct for your motorcycle. Just enter your year and model, and you'll see only the parts that fit your bike. That takes the guesswork out of the ordering process. Real-time stock information that is also available, so no need to guess what may be on back order that could delay your project. Also, if you're digging into a repair for the first time, be sure to check out Boxer 2 Valve's video repair series. These cover both twin shock and post-81 models and are great tutorials that go step by step through a variety of repairs and parts replacement procedures. The video series is a great workshop companion, one I've used many times over the years. So, for all your Airhead parts needs, Boxer2Valve.com. That's the number 2, Boxer2Valve.com. Did you have some hesitations about getting such a sort of clean, low-mile, original bike? I mean, did it give you pause? Like, gosh, maybe I don't want to ride this all over the place. Maybe it's too nice. Did that thought even cross your mind?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And in fact, that's been probably, I think, I mentioned that maybe in an email to you, that's been sort of a cause for major apprehension for the direction I want to take this bike. And I kind of want to preface everything for, there's people listening that's assuming that I ride a lot or have a ton of experience with this. And I really don't. And this is still something that, this is a hobby that I've wanted to really dive into for so long that it's kind of taken its toll on whether or not, like, you want to preserve something you think is iconic and know is beautiful and really is an incredible time capsule into the future. And, you're battling still the ever slightly declining values from COVID, but nonetheless, it's going to stay high for a long time. And I'm not in a position, pulling, 7 figures a year where I can just keep bikes pristine forever and fight my urges to just brap, and absolutely enjoy the hell out of them on the road. I mean, so it's a tough battle, certainly. And in fact, I recently picked up, I think I might have mentioned this to you as well, I picked up a full PD conversion on ADV Rider, and I dropped the tank off, which was in absolutely horrific shape. It had been rattle canned, et cetera, at a local really good body shop to get at least a base coat on it, the right primer, and get it cleaned up. And we'll see what direction I take for installing that stuff. But I'd be lying if I said the reason I didn't want the PD conversion was to almost preserve all of the original plastics, and that was kind of a big thing. And it's a give and take. And there's a really great fellow I met at I hate to keep mentioning it, but at SuperTech this year, who has a ton of bikes and is an absolute die-hard enthusiast for Airheads. And he came up and he said, "I absolutely love how thin you've kept that bike. Like, this build is clearly designed to be nice, lean, kind of, maybe closer to like an R80 GS style. And of course it is, and it's got the big fairing and the rhubards, but it's not the big girthy GS." And God, it hurt to hear that a little bit, because it was like, yeah, it is awesome the way it is, but when you're shooting for a dream, you got to at least taste it. You got to try it out. So anyway.
No, I can appreciate that, Zach. I mean, I have a first generation GS, but I still have a number of I've got 3 different tanks and different side panels and fenders and stuff. I can mix and match as the mood meets me. So I understand where you're going there. Did you have any pause when you first saw this bike on the decals and graphics of this particular year? Because it is one that it's kind of a love it or hate it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's sort of a big topic for darn near any of these bikes. I mean, outside of even the PDs, I mean, really just strange design choices. I feel like probably even for the time. I mean, it's reasonable to say something like eccentric colors would be expected at that time period. But, the tire tracks are like pebbles, or I don't know what those things were supposed to be, but it's a weird choice.
It is.
This one has the sort of the yellow with the gray, paint spatter design. And
that's right.
No, it's horrible. It's horrible. I hate it. I'm not going to lie. I really hate it. And that's been a major driving force to get a different tank on there. But,
yeah.
It's I guess what I mean is when you really permit yourself to engage in a passion and in a hobby, you almost don't want to set limits on it. You don't want to say well, I can deal with it because it was the design of the era. Instead, you're I'd like to make this mine, and it's tricky though. 15,000 miles now, 18 and a half. So I put quite a bit on it.
Yeah, good for you. Well, I like the direction you're going there. I mean, you could, like you say, you can pull the tank, fender and battery covers, stash it away. I guess same thing with the fairing as well. I mean, you can replace, if you wanted to just keep those original paint parts and throw some PD kit on there. I will say this, the front fairing part and the shroud around the gauges, if you haven't dug in there, it's a little bit fiddly getting your hands in there. If you've got any man-sized mitts to try to get in those holes, it can be a little bit frustrating. I don't know if you've done that yet, but just be prepared for for a little cussing and complaining every now and then when you do that. But all that to say, I like the direction you're going there. The PD tank, I had a 92 PD, and I called it the fuel mule. And that gas tank, I would go into town, fill it up. I mean, when it's full, it's close to 9 gallons. So 9 gallons of gas was 70 plus pounds. So, you're carrying around, a middle school age kid right on the tank there. And I would always drain half of it and use the fuel for my lawn equipment. I'd have my little 1 or 2 gallon jugs with a 2-stroke oil mix for my weed eater and that kind of stuff. And that's what I always used it for. Rarely did I fill it up and keep it full unless we were on a long trip. And then, everybody's always like, oh yeah, well, especially when you're riding with buddies, they're like, oh yeah, well, Zach's got plenty of gas. So, let's just keep going on past this station.
Yeah. Man, and gosh, it's funny you say that because this was the first long trip I took out to SuperTech this year in Boyertown, and that was in Pennsylvania. So that was about, I want to say it was like 300 miles, a little over that. And I just grossly overestimated my fuel economy, thinking, okay, if I'm doing 75 on I-80 or so for a while, like I just didn't expect it to run out. And, new to Airheads as well, I was running both petcocks open, which is sort of a silly thing to do when you've got that the basically like the fuel shared line.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
goes into the airbox. You don't need to do that. And I think it was just like, oh, there's two, so maybe I should have them both open. Well, that's completely defeats kind of the purpose of fuel monitoring. And so I ran out, merging onto I-80, with a tractor trailer behind me in the left lane. And it's just an amateur mistake. But, I got plenty of great tips from folks at the meetup about, run just one side and then, that kind of thing. So, and everybody, the 3 or 4 folks who have PDs were like, oh, you'll love your PD. The PDs, no problem. Like, no problem.
Let's talk about some of the changes, maybe parts you've replaced, modifications, whatever, since you've had the bike. You mentioned the rear shock from Ted Porter at the Beamer shop. Excellent call there. I think you also got a different exhaust, correct?
With the shock, I had planned on maybe a less expensive option. That was kind of my goal. I didn't really think, I didn't have end goal in mind for this purchase in particular. With so many other things with an old bike you think might go wrong, was to just kind of, I guess, just go all the way. And I ended up going this way. I'm not going to lie, because I ended up calling the Beamer shop. I think you might have mentioned give them a shout, or many folks did. There's a lot of folks that say, just go give the Beamer shop a call. And so I gave them a shout and ended up talking to Ted there. And I think we spoke nearly 3 hours. And
I believe
a phone call. Yeah, a phone call, just calling, inquiring as a newbie to not only this to this bike, but to the Airheads in general. And he was just so informative, and as has been the case with damn near everybody I've spoken to, it's been probably the best community I've dealt with of any hobby. But he really just sold me on it, and he wasn't trying. And it was really the kind of sales that, being kind and offering free information to somebody you don't even know, that's kind of how I operate, And so I automatically went that direction. So that was an easy sale. Anywho, moving on from that, I ended up finding the exhaust, which is a Super Trap, because I've had them on bikes prior, and I thought that would be really fun to hear on this, Boxer Twin, with no kind of reference on what it would sound like. And I found it for $300, including the Y pipe, with all of the fittings.
That's a great buy. Great buy.
Yeah, and it was actually off a, I believe it was an '89 R100 GS PD. And the guy had, I think he said he had 40 bikes, all Airheads. And he was a collector. He wasn't a shop. And he lives in New Jersey. And to my knowledge, he's not involved with, many of the bigger clubs. He may be, but, he didn't mention going to SuperTech or anything. And I was just astounded at how passionate this fellow was. And he sent it to me for $300. So I kind of jumped on that because my pre-muffler there had holes in it. And I probably could have spot welded them, and I kept it. I didn't get rid of it, obviously. But so yeah, I went that route. And then trying to speed this up a little bit, I've done quite a few just kind of basic mods to it. I did the top end reseal, and I got that kit, I believe, from maybe Boxer 2 valve. And then I swapped the valve covers to the peanut style, or the older style valve covers. And I can say just really briefly that I regret immensely not just going with their version that has the exposed Allen studs. They have some where you don't have to deal with the nuts on the backside of the valve cover, which is just super tedious. And I'm sure the folks who've been around long enough have found ways to do it quickly, but I find it really frustrating to pull a valve cover off.
Yeah,
and then I put
it's tricky. So did anybody put grease on your finger or spit on your finger and then just put the washer or nut on there? That's how I do it. Or I use a dental pick or something to hang them from there and then guide them on.
Yeah, Yeah, I've tried those, and then I ended up. What I've done now is I've got a 10 millimeter that's pretty flat, and I can just get my finger in, actually, just the tip of my pinky finger, and I can hold the nut. Still, I am dissatisfied with that design.
Yeah,
it's great from an aesthetic sense, but not so much from a utility sense. And then let's see what else. It's quite a bit. It's kind of hard to remember right now, but I did put the dual headlight.
Oh, that's right. Yep.
That was a pretty big one, and in fact, I even posted on ADV Rider about that because I couldn't figure out exactly how to get the headlight assembly removed, and it's kind of like a ball and socket design in that plastic. I don't know if you've removed that before, but
I have.
I was struggling to get that ball out without assuming I was going to thrash it. I mean, I was putting so much force on it, I thought I was going to break it, that inner bracket. And some folks were really quick to just say, like, no, you just gotta pull on it a little harder, and got it out. And that was when I learned the frustrating aspects of the fairing. And then I had to think back. I did do the single seat conversion on it. I got that from Bayer Motorrad out of Germany.
Yep.
And that one's great. And then I also did the rear rack conversion with that, and it's kind of a set. And then one thing that some folks were commenting on that I was kind of surprised wasn't more well-known was this Kako windshield. It's a taller windscreen off of eBay. It's out of Poland. And I got that for, I think it's $130, and it's incredible. It's got a super narrow profile. I think it just kind of matches the stock narrow profile. So what is that? Maybe 10 inches wide or so. And it just comes up about 5 inches taller. And it even has sort of a parabellum sort of recurve to the top. So let's say that windscreen kind of has a back slope to it. If you're looking at it from the front, you're tracing the line, it kind of slopes back, and then it's got a slope vertical after. I just love that design. So I can't recommend that enough. I have read some folks have had fitment issues. Mine's pretty good.
What was the brand again?
Kako. That's Charlie Alpha, Charlie Kilo, Oscar, I believe.
Got it. Yeah, I had an aftermarket windshield on my PD, and I had the name on the tip of my tongue. I hadn't thought about this before our discussion. Anyway, and yeah, it was a little bit taller, and I got along with it better as far as wind management and where it sat in relationship to my helmet, wind buffeting noise and all that, and all those sort of considerations. It's different for everybody. Some people just find the stock windshields fine depending on their height, your torso and all those kind of things, but that you found one that works good for you and looks smart, even better. Aside from getting the rear drum dialed in, other long-term plans?
Yeah, so I'm going to do a full kind of kicking myself for not doing that. Before the trip was front brake fluid flush, fork fluid. I'm sure it's black and just horrible in there. And then now, obviously, this transmission issue, which is kind of a major bummer. I have a huge trip planned for this summer, so that's going to set me back a bit. But it's kind of part and parcel to riding bikes like these, I guess. But,
have you noticed? Did you notice any, aside from draining the transmission, any shifting issues, noise? Was it getting hot, hotter than?
Not a thing.
Okay.
No, not a thing. And as far as heat goes, again, it's tough because I hate to make people think I'm certainly not an expert by any means. I'm very much an amateur here, and beyond just draining that fluid and finding a damn near a 1/4 inch tall mountain of shavings. It has not manifested any other issues, although I guess the big telltale sign would be popping it in neutral, throwing it on the center stand, rotating the rear wheel in neutral, and trying to see if you can, I guess it should be slightly audible, like almost a crunch or a resistance. I don't have that. However, the wheel has never just did a glassy rotation. So I kind of assume that could be it. It does have some resistance there. So,
all right. Yeah. So, Zach, I want to ask you about you've been alluding to SuperTech a lot here in the conversation. That's an event I've been meaning to go to, but scheduling and other commitments have precluded me from attending. I really wanted to go this year. So tell me a little bit about your experience there this year. I'm going to just go out on a limb and say you changed the bell curve on the age range there dramatically just by showing up, didn't you?
So there were, that was kind of a thing I mentioned, and it's sort of been a big point to being in all this, not rather like a driving force, but just sort of a point of discussion since I've been involved in this hobby. And it definitely comes from a place of being very concerned about the future of the hobby. And as folks age out, if there's still going to be, sort of the knowledge base and the ability to fix and maintain these. And getting there was one other guy who was a year older than I am, and no one younger. And I think that maybe the next closest was another 10 years or so. They're still pretty young. I mean, 42, is definitely not old by any stretch of the imagination. So, but having there only be two folks, maybe in their 30s there, it wasn't. Actually, I want to take that back. I think there might have been three. I just didn't meet everybody. So there certainly weren't a ton of younger folks there.
Yeah, my observation on that is when I was your age, about 20 years ago, and had been riding Airheads for a little while. That was one of the reasons I never really went to rallies or other club events or things like that, because I just didn't feel a connection with the generation that was there. I mean, I'd go, but when I was riding with younger friends and stuff, and I just felt a little bit out of place. And because of that, I just never really got into the rally club sort of social scene. As I've gotten older, it seems like I'm a little more comfortable in that, I guess. And I'm probably easier to get along with now than I was 20 years ago. I don't know. But okay. All that aside then. So the event, so Tom Cutter was there. Who else was there this year, and what were some of the topics?
Yep. Anton was there as well. Gosh, I'm really bad with names. And I sat through, there's, I want to say there's maybe five or six, seminars, lectures per day, or rather per session that you can sit through. So there's, I want to say 4 sessions on the Saturday. So you have to pick between 4 or 5 lectures, which one makes sense for you, which is, for me, very easy because it all is very new to me.
Sure.
But for a lot of other folks, it probably is very difficult to make those calls.
Now, did they have handouts? Were you taking notes? Were you taking?
Oh, God, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Both?
Handouts. And each presenter does it a little differently. You certainly can't expect everybody to do the same thing, and that's kind of the magic of the whole process. Just very briefly, I want to kind of touch on, before we skim past the age thing.
Yeah.
I was incredibly excited to see that the other fellow who was my age, we exchanged kind of emails and stuff, and we didn't get a chance too much to talk, but we were obviously both incredibly passionate about learning, kind of catching up and getting to the point where we felt proficient and taking advantage of SuperTech. And he emailed me that his major interest, which is in complete agreement, like almost emphatically with my interest in this hobby, is right to repair. And that's sort of where Airheads kind of stand alone, in my opinion, probably in his as well. That you can repair many bikes at home, right? But almost no bikes can you repair in the near totality that you can Airheads that are newer than, like, let's say 2005.
You're right.
And I think that sort of in damn near every hobby in my life and interest in my life plays a major role. Right to repair is a major facet in how I just believe in things that should be produced. And it was incredibly, intensely gratifying to meet someone not only, into Airheads that feels that way, but who is also my age. So I think that might be kind of the driving force. Maybe, we can paint it with a pretty broad brush here, but that might be why anybody really gets into Airheads at my age and younger, is folks who start to recognize that, like, hey, not only has that been invented, the bike that really can be figured out by, a lot of folks without too much knowledge. Obviously, you get into things, much deeper, where you need folks like Anton, you need folks with suspension experts and head experts. You need these folks, and electrician experts. But they're really very approachable. So that was pretty I'm sorry to go on that tangent.
No, that's a really good one. I hadn't thought about how folks in your generation might be looking at motorcycling as both a practical hobby and in some ways maybe even transportation. I'm sure you still ride to work or run errands and stuff on your bike all the time. It makes it fun, and practically speaking, gas mileage wise, it's not that bad. But you're 100% right. I haven't really thought about all the different makes and models that could fall into, and it's a great term you used, right to repair, meaning you're not bound to the dealer for something simple that you can do at home. So I can understand how that's a big draw. As you know, the aftermarket support for these motorcycles is great. So many parts vendors, globally speaking, which you've ordered from already. And then again, you just mentioned the great community and events and things you can go to, SuperTech being one of them. I guess at some point, you probably are going to look into maybe a tech day session or something nearby with the Airheads Club.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to go back a bit, right to repair, just for clarification, it's certainly not my term, but it's a really important one for the future of probably all products, but especially ones we trust our lives with as we truck down the road in remote areas. I believe that's a pretty important principle. So,
no, it really is.
Actually, really, really quick too. I want to ask you. I mean, so I want to see if I understood you correctly. Did you say that this isn't something that you really thought too much about being into Airheads, or is this something that you've also sort of felt a connection with as far as being able to fix these things on the side of the road and do the work yourself?
Yeah, Zach, I sort of came to that realization and appreciation later in life. I was fortunate where I grew up in Ohio, where I went to college, and later on in Memphis, Tennessee, where I lived, I had good friends who were excellent mechanics. And I was otherwise occupied with other things. I was a traveling musician for many years. I lived a little bit of a nomadic lifestyle, so I wasn't able to sort of gather tools and that sort of knowledge base. Back then I was a little bit more of as it got gas in it and the tires, they look fine. Okay, let's go. It wasn't until I moved to Arkansas about 12 years ago that I really had to take on that idea of right to repair, as you call it. I know it's not your term, but I never heard it used that way. Looking after it on my own, and I just really had to dive in head first and learn along the way a little bit later in my tenure in the ownership hobby. So that's where I come from with it. Yeah, that's
really interesting. Yeah, and I wonder if how much of that comes from just like they were still produced, brand new throughout probably a lot of your prime riding years.
That's right.
And so you never really had to worry about being able to fix stuff yourself when you knew at the very least a dealer would be able to fix it probably pretty easily as well. I mean, not that everybody would want to take it to a dealer, but that, if I went to a BMW dealer near me, I'm certain they wouldn't probably be the best choice for an Airhead.
Probably not. I mean, I think you've got Max, and I'm sure there are some independent shops up there that would treat you right.
Yeah.
What kind of comments, Zach, do you get on your GS from other friends who are either involved in motorcycling and may have something a little bit more modern, or just from family and friends in general? Say, gosh, Zach, that's a pretty unique motorcycle you decided to buy there. What have been some of the comments?
Yeah, unique motorcycle is definitely one of them, and I think, frankly, I'm probably going to offend some folks. I think most people are like, why would you be interested in that? I think a lot of folks, especially my age, don't understand what it is. They just see an old bike and they're off riding, not to make a comparison to a GS and like a street bike, but they're all, they're riding MT-09s and street-oriented bikes. A lot of naked bikes are very in vogue right now. So folks are really into just kind of going fast and looking cool and that kind of thing. Even the folks I work with, for instance, who don't know about motorcycles for the most part, just look at this as an old bike. They kind of think, I probably picked it up for $2,000, and it's just kind of a beater. And so I think it's kind of in that sweet spot of being a little bit incognito, despite the fact that it's got those giant cylinders on either side. I think people see the design of it. They see it's from the 90s. It's got those decals, those darn decals on them. It makes it look pretty old, just from a design perspective. But then there's folks, I have plenty of friends who I've met through, my life as a bicycle mechanic who certainly appear, right to repairing kind of utilitarianism and the concept of just having something that looks as it functions is pretty attractive. So there's a lot of folks I know who have adored it. And I have had two folks now in the brief period I've been riding Airheads actually come up at a store and say, like, hey, what is that? So that's pretty cool. I think after, how long was the run of these, to still have folks come up and say, wow, that's a pretty unique looking bike. It's like, yeah, it is.
It is, yeah. Now you can imagine, now I'm in rural Arkansas and I still have people come up to me and say, oh, I didn't know BMW made a bike. And I'll say, no, they didn't. I just put that sticker on the tank and just go on my way. No, but people, especially around, I'm in a V-twin culture area, let's just call it, where I'm at. So yeah, I am definitely in the minority. Occasionally I'll see a couple other Airhead riders around here that'll sneak down from Little Rock or something like that, but they're few and far between. I've heard from a few folks who are in the area as well. But all that to say, you do get some strange looks from people. I've had people just come up to me and just say the strange, just the rudest comments. Well, I always thought those BMs were ugly. Okay, I'm just trying to say, I see your wife sitting in the car there, buddy. She isn't looking too good either, but yeah, but I didn't go there, but I mean, I wanted to. I was just like, why does he even bring this up? It was pretty funny, but yeah, you do get some strange looks and some strange comments, but in the end, you're out there riding and you're enjoying this old classic BMW, which I'm really glad to see. When you initially emailed me and sent me those photos and told me about your bike, I thought, boy, man, he really got a nice gem there. Low mileage, hasn't been molested, excellent owner history, all the stuff you want to find when you're buying a bike. And Zach, I think that's just really putting you in a good position to enjoy it, have fun with it, and make it your own as the years go on. Continued success in everything you do. As always, as I say to everybody, keep me posted, drop a line anytime, and we'll look forward to catching up with you again.
Right on. It's been a pleasure, Darren. Thanks, man.
Thanks for joining us on the Short Wheelbase podcast, presented by the BMW Motorcycle Owners of America. To join the club, visit bmwmoa.org. You can find full-length episodes of the excerpts heard here on the Airhead 247 podcast. The Short Wheelbase podcast is produced and edited by Nick Malozzi. Audio segments by Jeff Glover. You can check in with Nick at Airhead Misfits on Instagram.